So if you want to keep your slaves, you gotta pay them, no, not pay them, but like pay them a good house and give them good food. At the very least, like a minimum. Those would be like the libs, the liberals at the time of like slavery. I think that the comparison between wage slavery and like chattel slavery, I don't think it should be compared. But I mean, it shouldn't be equated. But I think there's a comparison in the sense that it's a difference not of nature but of degree. A difference of nature and like the difference between a difference of nature and a difference of degree is, are the two things completely different, or are they just one is more intense than the other? And are the problems still at the same source, but the problem is less strong in one system than the other? Because in that sense, it's a difference of degree between chattel slavery and wage slavery, and the degree differences are astronomical, right? But like you can imagine a situation where you put a little bit of reforms to chattel slavery, and it becomes wage slavery in an instant. You know, with a couple of reforms. So let's say you live in a chattel slavery like society or economic model, and you say, all right, we're going to put a couple of reforms to chattel slavery because people have been complaining about it. So now slaves can now choose their masters. So if you're a bad master, the slave can decide to go to, if we take plantations, for example, the slave can now go to a different plantation if he or she so desires. All right. So now we're giving a bit of liberty, but still slavery. Then, all right, the slave now needs to be properly housed and properly fed. You can't give them a shit place to stay in. They need a proper house. So if you want to keep your slaves, you got to pay them, no, not pay them, but like pay them a good house and give them good food. At the very least, like a minimum. Those would be like the libs, the liberals at the time of like slavery. All right, we can't abolish slavery, but what we can do is make their conditions better. So now they can choose their masters, and now they're properly or semi-properly fed. There's standards to being properly fed and properly housed. All right. What about now? What if we say, instead of housing them and feeding them, they have a choice of which houses on your land and what food they can buy, and please make it affordable, right? And so in that sense, you're not paying them, but what you can do is, give them some bonds at the end of their day so that they can decide which house they have for the month, or what food they can consume. It's not a buffet, right? It's not like you have to give them, food like the whole month. Obviously not, right? Or else what would be the point of having slaves? So what you can do is give them bonds where they choose which food they can have. So that way you give them a bit of liberty. So now you have slaves who have to choose their masters, but now they can choose their houses. They can choose the food that is provided by the master. And I hope you see the progression, right? But they're still slaves. And maybe you can find a way of like, all right, after you get enough bonds or you work hard enough or long enough, what you can do, well, is use these bonds that you've accumulated, that maybe you saved up, instead of buying a house, or instead of buying not buying a house, but like renting a place on your master's property, or renting, or you saved up a bit on the food, and you decide to like stop eating some of the food, and you saved up a bit of bonds, right? And then you use these bonds. You could maybe buy your freedom, and buy yourself a land and work on itself without a master, and then you could be free. So you can free yourself through enough labor for your master. And you can still change masters if you're not happy with one of the masters. Anyway, all that situation that I'm slowly getting to is getting more and more similar to wage slavery. And if you say, well, the conditions are really, really terrible in child slavery, that's true. But again, imagine like through all these reforms, the liberals at that time would say, all right, well, now you can't be terrible to your slaves. You're housing them adequately, you're feeding them adequately, you're giving them a choice of which houses and which food they can have, and you give them you're allowing them to change masters if they want to. So that will force you to actually be a good slave master, because or else everyone will go to another slave master, right? So now you have to be a good slave master, so someone who's lenient, maybe who gives them breaks. And maybe we could even force slave masters to give breaks to their slaves, right? Through enough reforms and all that. All right, enough with the analogy. You probably get it, right? There is a link. Again, it's a difference of degree, not of nature. That was a big tangent. Nay. Rogo says, how about no masters? That's what I'm advocating for, right?